afternoon and welcome to our second day of the behavioral health track. Today we have Shylia starting our session on how to successfully navigate or introduce new behavioral health programs in Indian country. So Shylia is a tribal citizen of Mashantucket, Pequot tribal nation, and a passionate graduate of Nova Southeastern University, holding a bachelor's degree in Human Services Administration. With 3 years of experience as a program manager working under the CDC opioid grants in collaboration with the United South and Eastern Tribe, she successfully organized recovery events, facilitated mental health forums, and conducted community research to develop a comprehensive resource guide. Committed to serving her community, she strives to make a positive impact by promoting health, wellness, and empowerment within her tribal nation. Thank you for being here, Shylia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here at the last session with me. I will try not to bore you all, and we will get through this. So just to start, this can apply to any programs that you have. It doesn't necessarily have to be mental health based, but that is kind of the topic of the day. But this can apply to any programs that you might be running in your communities. So just to begin to give some information about us at Mashantucket. Mashantucket Pequots are Native Algonquin people who endured centuries of conflict, survival, and continuity on and around North America's oldest Indian reservation. Established 1666, located in southeastern Connecticut, in 1637, the Pequots became the first Native people to survive a genocidal massacre at the hands of European immigrants, and what would become the continental United States. Pequot history is an unprecedented story of redemption and restoration. Today, Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation owns and operates one of the largest and most successful resort casinos in North America, Foxwoods Resort Casino, along with a variety of other enterprises, including the Lake of Isles Golf Course, Pequot Pharmaceutical Network, and Spa at Norwich Inn. And I do have some other team members in here, so not to put you guys on the spot, but if you guys could just stand and say your name and what you do at MPTN, whatever your job title is, I would really appreciate that so everybody can know how you help us here. So whoever wants to go first, Sherry.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Marcusio, and I am the office manager in the clinic. Been there for a little over 20 years now, left for 5, then came back 4 years ago. So I love my job there. Yes, it's great, pleasure. Thank you for having us. Yeah. Great.
Hi, my name is Joanne Wilkinson. I'm the community health nurse at the Mashantucket Tribe. I am telling myself that I'm like a rock star. It's my 25th year there. Serving 4 generations of tribal people. It's been an honor, and really, it's just I share an office with Sherry. So I like to go to work every day. Share an office with somebody who likes to work. Right. We're proud of the work we do in service to the tribe. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I'm a disability case manager for the Mashantucket People Tribe Nation. 3 months, I'm a newbie. But so far, so good.
Very good.
Happy to stay. So those are just a few of the team members that are here today. So I wanted to make sure that way at the end, if you have any questions for me or any of them, that you know their faces. So we're going to jump right into everything. So when you are planning programs, starting new programs, or maybe trying to make current programs that you have better, these are just some important key points to think about as you're moving forward. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is build trust and community engagement. So actively engage with your community by participating in, supporting other grants, programs, and initiatives. By being present, you demonstrate your project's dedication to the community and allow people to become acquainted with your team. So if you're starting a new program and you have maybe a new team or maybe not so familiar faces within your community, this is a really good idea to get people on your team to get acquainted with the community and for your community to get acquainted with your team. And showing support to maybe other grants going on or other programs going on, that really helps with community members to recognize that you have a care and invested interest in what is going on within that tribal nation. And building trust is just so important if you want to have that retention there. So I always kind of recommend before even launching your program, just get started with showing up to events and introducing yourself to people or introducing your team to people. Another thing that's helpful is to establish a regular and well-structured event schedule to cultivate strong relationships. Building this trust will enhance participant retention and drive increased attendance and activity within the program. So offer unique and reoccurring events, classes, and initiatives as part of your program to foster familiarity and create multiple opportunities for community members to engage with your work. This approach not only enhances people's understanding of your initiatives, but also ensures that they have repeated chances to experience and benefit from them. So I think a good rule of thumb for this is you don't want to have too much time in between each event or each, we'll say, like, initiative that you're running in your community, because it doesn't help with building that trust in the community, and it also kind of forces things to fall off a little bit because people are going to forget. They need to be constantly seeing your faces, seeing your program, and just kind of having that constant reminder of what it is that you're doing in the community. So that's going to help you with gaining that attendance, getting that retention that you're looking for, and helping to alleviate any issues with people kind of like coming in, jumping out, or just falling off. So I always really recommend to try not to let like months go by in between each event and see how you can keep your community engaged. And sometimes you don't even have to do anything in person. We at Mashantucket, we have like a Facebook community group, so that's an opportunity for your program, if allowed, to post in there, or if you have any other ways of connecting with your community through social media, that can still keep your momentum going as you're still in the planning phases for other events that you might be wanting to do in the future. So continuing on with connecting with your community, you want to understand who your target audience is. So identifying your target audience, delve into specific demographics such as age groups, gender, tribal citizens residing on and off the reservation, and more. Note that different events and programs may cater to distinct or multiple audience groups. So a lot of us, we might have a project that is to service a wide range of ages or people in the community, but I do find it helps if you kind of like separate that a little bit into like smaller chunks, so that way you're catering to the different needs of people in the community. So something like a presentation of what I'm doing right now, a 5-year-old group is not going to want to sit there through that. So you got to try to find a way for that group specifically to keep them engaged. So that's just something to consider. And then another thing that I wanted to include, because sometimes we might not really think about this, is while we might be servicing tribal citizens that are on the reservation or maybe in close proximity, how does your program or project reach out to those who are maybe out of state or a little bit farther and aren't able to attend in person? So how can you still keep other citizens of the tribe still connected to what's going on the reservation, so that way they're still connecting with their people and not feeling so isolated? So if that is something that you are interested in, or just something to keep in mind as you're moving forward in your programs, that also helps with being helpful. And you can do that through Zoom or newsletters and things of that nature for those that are not currently residing on the reservation. So engaging with your target audience, gathering insights and assessing needs. So employ effective tools such as surveys, questionnaires, polls, and more to gather valuable insights from your target audience. Ensure that your surveys are concise, detailed, easily accessible, and user-friendly. Consider providing incentives to encourage survey completion and regularly revisit and update your surveys to stay up to date with the evolving needs and preferences. So sometimes it's helpful, or most times it's helpful before you kind of jump into your program to take a step back and just ask the community what is going to work best for them. So what do I mean by that? I mean, what days are better for them? What times are better for them? Are more people in your community available in the mornings or after work? What does that look like? That's just gonna help with, making sure that you have that attendance and retention as well. Because if you're starting a program, you can have a really, really great idea, but if you do it at a time that just doesn't work for the majority, you're not going to be able to reach people. So having these little pre-programmed surveys are a great way of just kind of understanding the needs of your community and being able to tailor and cater your programs to that. So creating a plan and preparing for the unexpected. So before I even get into this slide, no matter how well you try to execute these programs, something kind of always has a way of going wrong, and that is okay. It's just, I always think of it as just more data to use and how to improve, because sometimes it's just things happen that you didn't really account for. Maybe the weather is too hot or too cold that day if you were planning on doing something outside, and now you have to kind of figure out how you're going to fit this in before the end of the year. So those are just things to consider, but it's okay if things don't go as planned. I'm sure we all have had experiences with that. And I think the main thing when you're doing project management and our programs is being flexible and giving yourself and your team that grace to be able to work through the challenges. So some things to kind of help with that is encourage RSVPs to gauge attendance and facilitate headcount management, considering that building momentum may take some time. And what I mean by that is it's okay if only like 1 or 2 people show up to your program at first. You're just getting started and people are still kind of getting used to you being around, but that doesn't mean that your event was a complete fail. A lot of the time, people hear things through other members in the community, and that is how you can continue to build off of whatever events or workshops you're holding in your program. Anticipate that not everyone will attend initially, and be prepared to host events multiple times to attract a consistent number of participants. And I have done this before. I have hosted an event and I was super excited about it, and barely anybody showed up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And what I did was I did the same thing again at a different time. I researched, okay, what times work better for people. And the second time that I did the same event, I had, a turnout from 5 to like 30 people. So it's okay if you kind of have to, redo some things if you still want to reach and get that information out to your community. Provide ample notice for events and maintain consistent communication through well-designed flyers and reminders. Keep your community informed about upcoming events and important updates. Conduct post-event meetings with your team to evaluate successes and areas for improvement. Reflect on what went well and discuss strategies to enhance future events. And implement quick surveys or feedback mechanisms at the conclusions of events for the attendees as well, so that way their voices are being heard. So a lot of the time, we might wait to the very end of a program or a series that we're doing to start trying to figure out what we can do best. But I find it's a lot better and a lot easier to do that as you're going along. So having like a 2-question or 3-question questionnaire for your attendees at the end is really helpful to know how they liked your event and maybe how you can tweak other ones, so that way you don't just keep making the same mistakes. And the same thing with your team. Your team might have, some different challenges they face, And it might be good to take a step back for a second and kind of look into those challenges and see how you can, make things better. So that way you're not continuing to make the same mistakes as you're going along with your program. So this is like the official way to do things and official phases of planning and project management. So you have your initiation phase, your planning phase, your execution phase, your monitoring and controlling phase, and then closure. These get very intricate and detailed, but I just took the time to kind of cater it more to what I feel like our needs are here in Indian country and just simplify these a lot better. So I just wanted to provide the official way, but I'm not to show you the way that I feel like it works best. Okay, so with the initiation phase, this is the very beginning phase of your program, which will set the tone for its success. So this is where you're going to want to be very detailed. So step one would be brainstorm events and programs with your team, ensuring alignment with brand customers. Step two would be establish a central location for gathering ideas and designate responsibilities among team members, share drive for files, notes, etc. So this stuff is really important because you're gonna wanna have a place where all of the documentation from either your grant or your program or whatever it is that you're initiating in your communities, there needs to be a central location where everybody on your team can find this information. It just helps things to be a lot smoother, and it kind of alleviates unnecessary emails or email or meetings that could have been emails if you just have a place for someone to go and look up those documents. Also, assigning specific tasks for each member of your team so we know who's doing what. So if I'm in charge of doing the hearing or getting the meeting space, then go to Shylia if you have any questions about the meeting space or if we need to make any changes to that. So that just helps things to be more clean and organized. And then you're also going to want to, this is really important, you're also going to want to consider your team's existing projects and responsibilities as you enter the planning phase, ensuring efficient coordination and resource allocation. So a lot of us, we don't have big groups of people. We're probably like a group of 3 or 4 people working on something. And it can be really a lot because each one of us, we're wearing multiple hats. And for some of us, this is not the only program in the community that we're working on. We might be working on multiple programs in the community. So if you do have full-time members or team members, you might want to put I don't want to say the majority, but maybe the more time pressing or important things for those who are more full-time, and then be able to, spread evenly amongst those who are kind of spread out through the community with the different programs going on. So that just also helps to get things done more efficiently, because if you tack on something too much on one person who already is working on a lot of other programs in the community, then it might slow things down for the progression of your project. So the next phase is planning. You're going to want to create a well-defined timeline, specify dates and deadlines for achieving key milestones. So consider optimal event planning, avoiding overlaps with holidays, powwow seasons, and other programs to maximize attendance. So I ran into this issue, and I'm going to give you guys our own kind of mistake that we made, so that way it can help you to not do the same thing. This spring we were hosting what we were calling a sacred parenting class, but it was essentially a class for caregivers in the community to help them with grounding exercises, and just so that way our caregivers in our community aren't getting burnt out. But at the same time, our social services was doing a parenting class as well, and that was more geared towards new mothers or new parents. So people got confused between the two of these programs because they were happening at the same time and they have similar names. And that's why it's important to kind of keep an ear out and an eye out for what's already going on in your community, because our retention and our attendance like went down because people signed up for our class thinking it was the other class and vice versa, so we weren't really able to, we still had like a good turnout in my opinion for the class, but it could have been better had we kind of known about that and planned about that ahead of time. So that's just an example that I found that happened with us, and maybe that can help you in your programs. So that way we're not overlapping, and especially if you guys are kind of doing the same thing, maybe you guys can collab instead of hosting separate events to continue to keep the community together and working together. So execution, here are some key steps for program execution. You're gonna ensure you stay within your budget by monitoring expenses and making necessary adjustments. Secure appropriate meeting spaces with suitable capacities, locations, and amenities. Organize any catering services, taking into account menus, dietary restrictions, develop a comprehensive communication strategy, sending out updates, notifications, invitations to the community, and additionally consider other essential tasks such as if you need this, securing a permit or any equipment and materials you might need. And these are crucial steps for a smooth program execution and establishing a strong foundation for success. I know a lot of us are working with grants, so that's why I wanted to make sure I included that, because you want to be mindful of your spending, especially if you have kind of got a lump sum that you need to extend over a period of time. You just want to keep making sure that you're checking into that, so that way you're not spending too much on one event and then you don't have enough funding for the rest of the events that you might want to do. So during the execution phase, that's just something to keep in mind as you're moving forward. So monitoring and controlling, collecting data, keeping detailed records. I kind of went over this, but you're going to implement regular follow-up surveys, maintain open communication with tribal citizens to ensure your program aligns with its targeted goals, and continue monitoring and evaluating what is and isn't working effectively, allowing for timely adjustments and improvements. And then to close out your program, you're going to want to evaluate program data from the surveys that you were taking along the way, and any feedback that you got to assess your program's performance, including challenges and successes. Collaborate with your team to identify changes for future improvement. Share the analysis and findings with key stakeholders such as tribal council or any chiefs, elders, people in the community who might benefit from hearing this information, obviously being mindful of confidentiality as you're doing that. But I wanted to make sure I included that because, for example, when we were working, like my grant is on substance abuse and opioids. So when we were finding that a lot of our tribal citizens were speaking on trauma kind of being that main trigger for them when it came to substance abuse or maybe experimenting with opioids, that was something I shared with our tribal council, so that way maybe we can work together in that initiative to help with the trauma or figure out where we can bridge these gaps with behavioral health, our behavioral health team, and our tribal health services team, so that way we're making sure that we're servicing our community the best way possible. So sometimes it's not the best, if you can, because I know we have like different confidentiality rules, but if you can, it's good to think of people in the community who do have a major voice in the community and who can help you moving forward and just sharing that information with them. Because a lot of this information is stuff that our tribal citizens might not know. They might not know just how many people are suffering from substance abuse. They might not know how many people are suffering with suicidal ideations and things like that. So that's just like good for the community as well. So distinct challenges faced in Indigenous communities. Ensure that new programs are culturally appropriate and sensitive to the needs and values of the tribal community. So cultural sensitivity is important. Programs need to be respectful and sensitive to the cultural values, traditions, and protocols of the tribal community that you're working with. Adapting and aligning your initiatives to honor cultural practice is crucial for building trust and meaningful engagement. So for us, sometimes what I like to do is see how I can get any tribal elders involved with our programs or any classes that we're holding. And sometimes they lead with like a prayer or meditation, or, you know, just trying to include any traditional aspects as much as you can. And your programs really helps to connect with your community, and also just being mindful of different traditions and cultural values, because while something might work for another tribe, that might not be something that's okay with the tribe that you're working with. So just keeping that in mind as well. Another big thing is historical trauma and trust building. So if you noticed, a lot of this presentation has been bringing it back to building that trust. I've heard, as I've been sitting, you know, through these workshops and presentations, a lot of people have been having questions on how do we get that attendance? How do we get that retention when it comes to our programs? And a lot of it is a very simple answer of just building that trust in your community. That's a major thing that comes up with us is, you know, we're dealing with heavy topics and people don't want their business out in the community, and you're dealing with other family members. So that's just something to try to keep in mind. And also when it comes to historical trauma and mistrust, that results from past experiences with external entities, and that can impact community engagement. So building trust through ongoing communication, transparency, and demonstrating long-term commitment is vital for the successful program implementation. Another thing to consider is sovereignty and self-determination. So tribal communities have a unique political structures, if you will, and a strong emphasis on sovereignty and self-governance. Programs must recognize and respect tribal authority, involving tribal leadership and engaging in meaningful consultation through the process. So like I said, I think it's always a good idea to talk to any elders, chiefs, tribal council members that you can, and just continue to have them on board with what you have going on in the community, and just showing that respect there can really help with your program's success. So now just focusing on mental health specifically, addressing stigma and audience engagement. So recognize the presence of mental health stigma, which can pose challenges in gaining an audience for certain topics. We are all very passionate about the work that we do, and we have a vested interest in behavioral health and mental health issues. Everybody is not in the same place that we are, and everybody is not as willing to kind of open up their traumas in a room full of other family members or individuals. So that's just something to keep in mind, and I think what helps is kind of destigmatizing mental health or substance abuse, and kind of starting your programs with having a session, just really talking about that and helping people to feel, you know, less intimidated about sharing. Implement strategies to address the stigma and create that awareness and increase awareness, and create a safe space and an accepting environment for these types of discussions. Trust and sensitivity. Understand that individuals may find it difficult to trust and open up about sensitive topics, especially in the presence of other community members, and foster an atmosphere of trust, respect, and confidentiality to encourage individuals to feel comfortable sharing their experiences. And then it's important to have a tailored approach. So acknowledge that different individuals have varied comfort levels in seeking support and discussing mental health. Consider the value of smaller support groups or more intimate settings, as they can offer a sense of safety and increased participation. And I think this last piece is very important, because I know for us, we want to just help as much people as possible. So we're looking at the numbers. We're like, oh, only 2 people showed up, only 3 people showed up. But sometimes when we're talking about topics like this, that's kind of better to have smaller groups, because it's less intimidating. Everybody is able to share, and it just creates the feeling of a safer space. So sometimes less is actually more with your programs. And, success isn't always determined by the amount of people that are showing up. Or, maybe consistently showing up, but as long as you're making an impact in the small pockets of the community that you can, I would consider that to be successful. So having small groups, or maybe sometimes even like having the amount of people, can really help with these types of programs as you're moving forward. And that is all. So if you have any questions for me, please let me know. And before I officially close out, there is just, something I really felt like I wanted to say, and I wanted everybody today to just know that, we're all working very hard in our field, and we're all doing the best we can. We're all here because we have a passion and we have a vested interest in the positive impact in Indigenous communities. And it's not easy, so I really just wanted to say thank you all today who are in the room, and I wanted you guys to give yourselves a round of applause. But if you have any questions for me or any of our lovely team members, the floor is now yours, or even any questions amongst the group, because I do like to encourage everybody contributing. Yes.
I know something that we struggled with when we were developing a curriculum is that, we're like trying to find a balance of like, yes, we want your input, but also we're trying to build this curriculum, so we don't want like too much input. I know like that sounds mean, but how do you find that balance of like, yes, we want you to help, but I want you to only help. I don't want you to think like you're doing this.
Program.
Yeah, like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, in our community, our elders are very opinionated, as they should be, and I think that happens across the board. So that's something that we kind of experience a lot. But one thing that I feel like does help is obviously being respectful and having that listening ear, but also reinforcing to them any knowledge that you might have, because at the end of the day, you're doing this program because you're kind of the expert in your field. And there might be some things that they might not know about either. So sometimes explaining why you're doing certain things instead of maybe doing it one way instead of another way, that can help kind of bridge that gap and give people that understanding of what's going on and why you're doing it. And I don't want to say you don't have to take everyone's opinion, but I think it's good to just receive it and really like know how to filter that information and see how you can incorporate it in a way that makes sense. Because again, like, we kind of are the experts in our field, and we have our own protocol that we have to follow. So sometimes giving that explanation can really help with people being okay with what it is that you're doing and knowing that there is a reason for it.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
No, yeah, for sure. I just think like we particularly like childcare wanted to like help with our curriculum, and they have a totally different, like they didn't go to the training that we went to. So to them, it's like, oh, we're just creating this curriculum, like we can do it whatever way, but there were certain things like that we needed to touch on in all 12 of our units that I don't think they necessarily understood. So
Right.
we were struggling to like communicate with them as far as like, all right, we need your help.
Right.
But we don't want for you to be like, all right, let's take this and let's work on this together, because they didn't have the same training that we did. So that's personally where I struggled developing the curriculum that we developed, is finding that happy medium of like taking in the information, but then I guess my problem was on the back end of like having to filter through it. Cause I was like, wait a minute, it's hard to filter through those things whenever, yeah, their thoughts are valid and their opinions are valid, but not for this, not for like what I'm trying to do. Maybe I don't need your whole opinion right now, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
And that's okay, and that definitely happens, and I think that's why I wanted to include that piece of like before even really like jumping into your programs, getting acquainted with the other programs or maybe departments.
Yeah.
And letting them know ahead of time what it is that you're gonna be doing, and like I said, maybe providing that explanation as to why, because you guys have had the training and you know what you're doing, so you gotta like, it's important to be respectful, but also, you have to follow the right protocols.
Yeah.
And boundaries, I mean,
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. yes, I value, but, you know, this is my lane, your lane.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think boundaries would have helped a lot,
Yeah,
had we set those up clearly. Yeah. Okay.
but it's never too late, you know, I always have to, like, you know, reintroduce that
Yeah,
conversation.
And I think like this year, we're gonna struggle because we're opening that door to childcare and saying, hey, look, all right, now we want it. Now we want like more help than what we, asked for last time. So I think definitely we're gonna have to set those, like you said, boundaries, those lanes of like, this is what you're here to help with.
Right.
Let's stay within that realm.
Right, and that was one of the things I was gonna say too, is like be very specific with what you're asking them for, because sometimes you can give people too general, but they kind of take it
Yeah.
over a little bit, so that is also helpful too, because I specifically need your help with this.
Right, yeah,
And I
thank
got
you.
the rest.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess that means I did a good job then.
So thank you, Shyla, for this presentation, and USET wants to give you a little token of our appreciation.
Thank you. It's me, I love you guys.
So tell us what you think. Please complete the evaluation that will be emailed to you at the end of this session. The more evaluations you fill up, the more opportunities for us. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. We don't have to get used. So done.
Down from the how do we go down this? I'm gonna still do this one.
Yeah. I just want to make sure. So.